The National Lotteries Commission Board has approved a process that could result in financial reparations to staff who were driven out of their jobs for blowing the whistle on corruption. The Commission hopes to use proceeds from the sale of seized assets, like properties and cars bought with looted lottery funds. National Lotteries Commissioner Jodi Scholtz is joining us now to tell us a little bit more about her efforts. Ms. Scholtz, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. So just overall first, before we dig into the nitty-gritty of our conversation, how is your process going so far in cleaning up the Commission?
Hi, Dan, and thank you very much for this interview. Dan, I think it started, the board set out 3 priority areas: restoring governance, restoring the mandate, and then looking at operational efficiencies. And so we've worked quite hectically on looking at our grant funding processes and developed a risk-based model. So in terms of operational efficiencies, we've had to introduce a number of compliance measures to ensure that our beneficiaries are compliant and so that we can continue distributing funds. So I think we're in the thick of things. We haven't turned the corner as yet. There's still a lot of work to do in terms of the rest of the organization. But in terms of grant funding, we've also appointed an inspectorate function to assist us to assess each of the projects that we potentially would be funding.
Did you find there was a lot of wrong governance-wise when you came in?
Absolutely. Yes, it was a real mixed bag. I think internally in the institution, functions had been moved for whatever means or reasons. It didn't really make sense from an org design perspective. In terms of our beneficiaries as well, I think unfortunately a number have also been implicated in these corruption scandals that the SIU has been investigating. So yes, lots of governance infringements. I think the board has been very clear about restoring governance. They've set a very good example. And so we've also had to mirror that internally.
Yeah, the morale must be very low for your staff there.
Yes, it is. I think, in my last meeting with the entire team, I think the colleagues were actually saying to me, that they're actually sick and tired of all of this corruption. Not all of us are corrupt. And so the sooner we can get on with cleaning out the rats, the better for all of us. So yes, I think it is, colleagues are taking strain. People are very fragile. And I think some are a bit nervous, as they rightfully should be.
Yeah, I understand some of the key aspects of your cleanup, with governance and stuff, will include lifestyle audits and integrity testing. Tell us more about that.
So we've issued a tender to go out and do some integrity testing. The SIU, this is on one of the recommendations from the SIU that have said, one of the ways in which to restore integrity internally is to actually do these tests. So as I understand it, it's a 2-phase test. One involves a written test, which is then corroborated with a voice stress analysis test. We're hoping to start rolling that out, I think, by the end of July. And then lifestyle audits as well. I think that tender is also due to go out either, if it hasn't gone out this week, then definitely next week. And the idea is that we all subject ourselves to this so that we understand what we're dealing with as an institution.
Yeah, you've been very busy. I see you've met with the staff, with the unions, you're meeting with the stakeholders, including communities who were wronged by the Commission and in trying to repair the damage caused. How are you going to do that?
You know what, Dan? I think this is part of the reparations program. We have one that we focus on internal, people have been wronged internally as well as externally. And it's going to involve a series of conversations. I think those conversations are going to be hard. It's going to be a bitter tablet to swallow. And I think with proper community engagement, the Minister of Social Development, she's also on board in terms of lending support to us because, we have all of these properties littered across the country that are in various stages of construction or disrepair. And I think disrepair is probably putting it very mildly. And so we need to go into those communities to understand what the communities actually want and what they need before we just go and willy-nilly fix up a building and say to the community, here it is. Because I think the approach that was taken under the previous regime was that there wasn't proper consultation and in-depth consultation with communities. With the result is that you have a number of structures that the communities don't actually want or require or need.
Yeah. Have you found that the systems that are in place were deliberately set up to facilitate corruption?
Dan, unfortunately, that's the only conclusion that I can come to. For instance, the system didn't even accept an ID number. Now, I know of no system in the world that doesn't have a unique identifier. And so the colleagues would say to me, no, it wasn't a requirement, for instance. Now, why that wasn't the case, I don't know. So the systems, the processes, you have individuals in your assurance units not being given access to the entire population of the system. So, when I meet with them and I ask them, so how do you do your work? They say, well, they'd get the documents from someone and that someone would screen the documents. So it's not an optimal way of functioning at all. So we've had to really dig deep and go back to basics.
Where are you going to learn from? In terms of reparations, for example, are they going to be financial? Is it just going to be, we are sorry, we apologize, like SARS did last year in November?
So the team and I have met with SARS, and I think they've been incredibly helpful just in terms of guiding us through this process. So we're looking at a similar kind of process, Dan. The idea is that whatever compensation it would, or whatever reparation, it has to be meaningful for that specific person. So, I think the PFMA is pretty strict and doesn't give one much room to maneuver. And so we are looking at some avenues in terms of, should we need to make financial reparations? How would we make those? And from which funding source would that come from?
Okay. In fixing the wrongs of the past, could you re-employ some of the former employees whom I know you've met?
I have met with them. I think just in terms of our processes internally, we don't have that many vacancies. So we are undertaking a broader org review, which we'll do in the next few months. And it's not off the cards. And so where people have the skills, and they must certainly apply. But I think right now, and I think when I was on one of the breakfast shows, I did indicate it wasn't possible at that stage. But I think as we create more positions and we look at different functions being included into the commission, there's certainly opportunities for people to apply. Yeah.
I understand you, as I said in my intro, you'll be raising your funding for some of that financial reparation to the extent that the PFMA allows you, from the sale of the seized assets and property like cars and homes and that the SIU has managed to get back. Do you have an idea of how much you lay out in those financial reparations? Is there a figure?
I don't have a figure, Dan. Currently, we've received we haven't received it yet. I think there's still discussions in terms of making this happen, around 3.9 million. And we certainly are anticipating more funds coming to us via the SIU. But as to a figure, I don't have a ballpark. I don't even have a ballpark because, I don't even know how many people have been affected. I've been told there's a figure of about 60 staff members that have either been dismissed or actively worked out of the commission. I still need to verify and corroborate that amount and determine whether that is indeed the case.
And how many community organizations were impacted?
Sure. Dan, so the SIU says to us that around 1,600 beneficiaries have been part of this process, and so we haven't been able to determine that definitively as yet. So there's still a lot of work that we actually need to go and do.
Yes. Okay. And grant funding, have you resumed?
We certainly have. We published a new call on the 2nd of May. With a revised process, obviously sticking to within the 150 days that's legislated in terms of adjudicating and getting back to our applicants. And so, yes, certainly we have.
And your system has been improved now to take ID numbers.
Yes, it certainly has, Dan.
Yeah. Okay, what still gives you sleepless nights about what's going on and the cleaning up processes? Where are the challenges currently? What are you battling with?
I think, I'm a fairly impatient person. So I think and the SIU has been really great. We have regular monthly meetings, but I just think the process, I'd like it to be sped up. And particularly where where staff have been implicated, I'd like that to get resolved a lot quicker, because I think the sooner we can clean up internally, and I think then we're on a different footing, that would then, help us to move at a greater speed. So
Yeah.
internally, I think is a bit of a challenge for me still right now.
Yeah, and to the extent that the PFMA can help you expedite things externally, hopefully you'll succeed with it. Internally, do you foresee a need for a change of culture? What do they call it? Culture management or change management that would assist your employees to move and embrace the new way?
Absolutely. The colleagues internally say to me, Dan, that they're not all corrupt. And if you just look at some individuals internally who've actually been whistleblowers, others who've gone and reported individuals who belong to various professional organizations, they've actually gone and reported these specific individuals, and those individuals have been suspended, for instance, from SICA. So individuals are committed internally. I think there's a really great sense of wanting to be there and wanting to make a difference. And so I think the sooner we can move and get past these corruption allegations, which I think unfortunately is still going to be for a while yet. Until then, I think we have to then look internally, do this culture change, and that's part of the work that we're currently embarking on, because that's absolutely needed. People feel demoralized, they've been beaten, they've been intimidated, well, not beaten physically, but browbeaten, intimidated, and so restoring dignity to those internally is absolutely central to that change management and that change of culture.
Yeah, no wonder it's the biggest headache you're facing now, and it's a huge challenge. You've mentioned integrity testing. Would you undergo it yourself?
Absolutely. And I've even said, I think when I spoke to Raymond Joseph, I said to him, I have no problem making my results public at all. The board has also said that they are certainly part of this and they will undergo these tests themselves. So certainly I can't be in a position where I say to the rest of the team, they've got to do it and I don't. So absolutely.
And you'll tell us, the rest of the country, how you fared in your integrity testing?
I would, yes.
Okay, no, we wish you well. We'll touch base with you as you go on, because it's a very important institution, because you handle millions and millions, if not billions, of rand, and it's supposed to be for the benefit of the good of society. Thank you very much, Ms. Scholtz. Jodi Scholtz, the new boss. She's the new boss of the National Lotteries Commission. That's Jodi Scholtz talking to us about her efforts to clean up the institution.